Um, hey, there it goes. Um,
Sorry.
uh, that's okay. At least it's a pleasant voice, you know? Um, so, but anyways, I I have basically, other than the friends that have known that I've come out as a transgender woman. A lot of people in public don't know. I just go on my normal life, carry on, and we just kind of work as a female couple and just do our thing. Um, and so when people find out, there's like a lot of stuff that goes on, from the people that they're going like, no, 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 you're not. And then there's those that go and they step back, and their eyes get a little bit wide, and I have to say, calm down, just calm down. And then there's some, like at the dentist office one day, a new hygienist came in, and she was going through my records, and she was like, I'm looking over your prescriptions here, and you're on estrogen? And I said, yeah. She says, I know I'm probably not supposed to ask this, but I'm looking, at menopause ahead too, and I'm not, how is that? I says, well, to tell you the truth, I'm going through puberty and menopause at the same time. And and she gave me this look like, and I said, well, I'm a transgender woman. And she goes, no way. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. A real transgender woman? And oh my God. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just, and I have to remember sometimes that I'm like one of the first transgender people that some people meet. And you hear so much in the media and sensationalistic publications and just all everything that's out there, and it's just people living their lives. So anyway, with that precipice, is that the right word, precipice? Anyway, um
Not really.
I'll start at the very beginning. I always do that because I'm busy writing a book, and I'm very big into pop culture. I grew up in I was born in the late 50s. Um, and my birth is kind of shrouded in mystery. Um, I have a twin sister, and this, of course, being the 50s, no one knew that my mom was going to have twins. My mom didn't even know she was having twins, and until she was kind of put under before she went in, because they realized, I guess they took x-rays or whatever, because this was before ultrasound, and they actually went out to my dad and said, prepare yourself, it looks like you're going to have twin girls. And so anyways, when my mom woke up, all she knows is that I was being put into an incubator after some kind of surgery. I have no idea. She has no idea. Nobody has any idea. But anyways, that's kind of, and I asked my mom, and she says, well, if that's what you want to believe, then I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. And so,
About what though?
well, I always had suspicions that some things were done, and I don't really know the truth of that. And right now, does it even matter? I am who I am now, and so I don't want to propagate anything that's fabricated on my part or anybody else's. So needless to say, I have a twin sister. I have two younger brothers. I was born in the late 50s, and by the time I was 4 years old, I spent a lot of time playing dolls with my sister, playing house, playing, it was, we had a great time. And so basically, as kindergarten was coming around the corner, I was given a teddy bear. My baby doll that I had was taken away from me, and I was given a teddy bear, and I was told to go out and play with the boys in the neighborhood and get ready for school. I went out to play with the boys, and of course, I was promptly beat up. And, because I was a girly boy. And anyway, so I knew something was up at about that time. Um, as puberty hit and things were I always kind of identified with the girls. I always wanted to play, with the girls on the playground, do what they were doing. And it never really felt right to play with the guys, even though I was into dinosaurs. I was into, model cars. I was, yeah, it kind of went through all that. And this is kind of like 1968, 1969. My sister's in Brownies and Girl Scouts. And this is where my lovely wife came in, because I met her through my mom's Girl Scout troop. And people always ask, even before, well, how did you two meet? And it was like, Mom's Girl Scout troop. And they look at her, they look at me, and I said, there's a story there, yeah. But, we kind of hit it off, and even, because my dad worked and my mom took us all up to Girl Scout camp, and I was to look after my two younger brothers. And, I was all of about 10 at that time. So my brothers was 6 and 4. So I had to watch after them. And Cece, coming from a big family, she jumped right in to help corral them with me. And and we went down the trails together. We swam and pulled up seaweed together, and we had a great time, and we got to know each other as friends. And that continued on, throughout our high school, our high school career, because basically she went to a parochial school and I didn't see her until 10th grade again. But she kept inviting me to Girl Scout functions as her date. And because, as you said, you didn't know anybody that would come join you that knew everybody else. Cease is a very kind of independent person. Is that okay to say?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, we take care of our own. We are really, we are two people that we are together. We love each other. But in the sense that, I don't know how to say this. It just,
we both have our own path, but we keep converging.
yeah. We can we go to family functions sometimes, and she goes one way, I go another. Will, our son, goes another way, and we don't see each other until it's time to leave. Because it's not like some couples, they go and there's always one partner that's always kind of hanging on to the other. They don't want to leave. That's their security. Cease was like, yeah, I'll invite him to my parties with me at the Girl Scouts, because he already knows all the girls here. And if I leave to talk to somebody else, he's not going to feel out of place. He's got someone to talk to, because he's friends with everybody else. And that was always a good thing, Mm-hmm. And that independence has always been a hallmark of our relationship, that we're two people that love each other and like being together and do things together. But at the same token, we can do things apart and not feel one is totally missing. You know what I mean? Is that a good way to put it?
That's great. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Always want to chat. So, anyway, oh yeah, we're getting into the 10 year. I'm looking at the time here, and it's 17 after, and I got, this itinerary to follow. And I actually wrote this, it was a 20-minute spiel that I gave for U of M Flint, about in 2017, for their coming out day. It was October 10th, and I went up there and I talked with the group. So I'm kind of going off the notes in my head on that. 11, puberty hit. It hit my sister first, and when it hit her, it hit me. People ask about the twin thing. It exists. It's real. Does it exist between a male and a female siblings that are twins? Well, things that I found about me since, I was kind of in the middle. I wasn't all guy and I wasn't all girl, and I was right in the middle. And I get hit with the puberty thing too. She's wearing all, I mean, this is like the early 70s now, like 70, 71, and girls are wearing bodysuits and mini skirts and the granny boots and the hoop earrings, and it's like I'm watching this and I'm going, that is so cool. I'm watching my sister just kind of, and I'm going, and when she grew out of some of her clothes, because she grew a whole foot taller than me, like really right off the bat, and I was like down here. I've since come up. I'm about an inch taller than her now, but and my two brothers, I always felt I just kept waiting for a growth spurt because I'm only 5'3", and my sister's 5'2", and I'm like going, oh, when am I going to grow? Both of my brothers are over 6 foot, and it's like, what happened to me? Now it makes sense. But then it was like, which led to more adversity and bullying on the playground. So anyway, when no one was home one day, Mom was going through her clothes. She took a bunch of them downstairs to the basement for Goodwill. And I went down there one day and I saw him just kind of sitting there, and I was like, oh, gotta try these on, and so I kind of tried them on in private, and that whole summer it was just like, oh, this is so cool. And so our neighbor had a yard sale, and she was selling this little twiggy wig type of thing, and for $1, and I was like, oh, I have $1, I gotta some money for my birthday. I'll go in, and so I went to the neighbor and I said, I want to buy this wig, and she was like, you do? Oh, it's for my twin sister. Okay, all right. That I've always throughout my whole life as dressing as a female, I've always had my sister or my spouse to kind of take the rap for. and, and I'd always go up, when I buy something, and they'd look at me weird, and I'd say, well, this is for my wife, flash my wedding ring, and this is for my wife, and it, and then they'd ask, oh, do you need a gift receipt? And I said, well, if she doesn't like it, she might want to bring it back. And so I played the game, of course. And because at that time, people always ask me, how did you hide it so well? And you do what you have to do as a person who feels they're in the wrong body, because especially in the 60s and 70s, you didn't want anybody to know. I mean, I got beat up enough as it was for being, short and kind of feminine. And so I really, didn't want to put that out there. And that's what makes it so scary sometimes for transgender people, because we feel we're labeled unjustly, and then we have to kind of prove that we are. People always said, well, you always had a girlfriend, you got married, and it's like, oh, if you knew something was up, why did you do that? And I said, pretenses first and foremost. And now, people ask me, so are you attracted to the other sex? I said, well, not really. I mean, I have my partner and we're happy, and that's where we're at. So anyway, back at 11, I was dressing in my sister's clothes all summer long, and it was like, this is so cool. I was making up stories and this and that, and one day Mom yelled, are you down there? And I was like, and I didn't want to get caught, but the lights were on. Well, if you're not down there, why are the lights on? You could hear her yelling across the bedroom or out to the back or whatever. And so she came down, and it was like a Saturday, and I got caught, and she froze, and I know she's gonna be watching this later on. And so, but she knows the story anyway. I just kind of stood there, and she called up to Dad, and Dad came down, and I was read the riot act, and then shortly thereafter entered into seeing a therapist to, I guess, convince me that I was male. And it worked for the most part until I had in high school, you know how they have Spirit Week? And they have a dress in blue day. This is blue and gold day, so dress in blue and gold because those are the school colors. Pajama day, farm day, switch roles day. And the girlfriend I had at the time thought it would be kind of cute to dress me up. And at that time, everything just came back. She did a nice job. And so I basically kept it under wraps from there on out because I didn't want to go back to the psychiatrist chair. I kept it hidden all through my first marriage, and basically when that marriage ended and we were seeing different counselors, like the fifth time I was seeing this one guy, he looked at me, he says, you can come dressed as you feel. And I said, dressed as I feel? I mean, I'm in my mid-20s by now, we're in the mid-80s, and things, and I watched what happened to Elton John and his career when he announced his bisexuality in the late 70s, and everything just kind of tanked on him. And I said, if this can happen to a superstar, then I don't want it happening to me. And at that time, I didn't know, what was actually going on. I mean, I followed the careers of Renee Richards, the tennis player, and actually Walter Carlos, who did Switched on Bach, and what was the other one he did? Clockwork Orange. And so basically Walter, very talented musician, revolutionized the Moog synthesizer, and because I love Bach and I was listening to all that, I was actually going in and to the record store one day, and I was leafing through his catalog and then I found a new Switched on Brandenburg, and it was by Wendy Carlos. And I'm going, what happened? And so I, back then, no internet, no, the library, trying to research what happened to Walter and Wendy. Was this his sister that he was helping to usher into the music field? But anyways, it was kind of cool. I was drawn to it. I bought the album, loved it, still have it. And anyway, later on I did find out, that Walter became Wendy. And when we start, I'm looking at your face back here.
I'm just listening.
I look back at that, and people wonder where my name came from, and we're getting to that. So anyways, I was sitting in this counselor's chair trying to deal with a divorce and life on my own, and he's sitting there saying I can come in and be who I need to be. And I did my best. I don't remember telling him anything about cross-dressing. I don't remember telling him anything about having feminine feelings. I don't remember telling him anything about wanting to change my life. And he caught it. He was good. And it freaked me out. And I didn't acknowledge it then. And I never saw him again. I didn't go back. And then a couple years later, we had our reunion from high school. And I met up with a friend who had been a friend all these years, and he was interesting because he was very effeminate too, and he always felt a close kinship to me, although I was like, I don't want you hanging around because I don't want to have that persona. But anyway, he didn't care. He would go in and do ballet in the guys' room, because all the jocks would push him in there, and he would do ballet, but he charged them, and he'd come out with like $4 or $5, and he says, because I always says, why are you letting him do this to you? And he'd flash a $5 bill, and he'd say, I got lunch. I said, okay. When he was in college, he came out and found himself, and he was bound to determined I was going to find myself at that reunion. Didn't go for it. And then Cece and I, she came back into my life, and we moved on. Somewhere along the line, I think it was a wig.
Might have been a wig.
The wig that we got up in Lansing. Okay, I was doing a desktop publishing job up in Lansing, and it was right above the wig store. I went down and I grabbed a wig, and of course, I'm getting it for her because I did Photoshop, and I could, I put a wig on her. I said, oh wow, this is cool. And so, anyways, the gal there, she said, do you want to try it on? And I was like horrified. I'm going, no, I don't think so. So all these years, I'm really denying myself. And, we took the wig, and she dressed me up for Halloween, and the Halloween thing became the thing. And so it became, she was like, okay, I know you like doing this, so it was part of our wedding vows that she would, support me in all my endeavors. And this was an endeavor, and as long as I didn't cross-dress around her, she was like, go for it. I'll call when I'm on my way home, and you can get back to normal, and it would be cool. So that was the arrangement. And it kept growing and growing and growing. And then finally, in 2012, I dressed for another Halloween, and one of my best friends came up, and he says, are you not telling us something that we should know? And I'm like going, well, no. See, still denying it. And see, that's the thing, saving face is everything out there, because I've heard stories of transgender women that lose their spouse, they lose their job, they lose the respect of their family. All of a sudden they don't have anybody to turn to. They're out on the street, and it's for that very reason that there is like a 42 to 48% chance that transgender people do end up committing suicide. And that's a staggering number. I mean, you look at the numbers even for some of the diseases out there, and they don't equal that amount. And I will say, over the past 6 years that I've been on my journey, I have had to suffer several of my friends who, even after they transitioned, they committed suicide. And this is, you get to know people in the community, and you try to support them, and you try to bolster them and say, you're okay, but and then they look at me and they say, but you have your spouse, you have your job, even on Facebook you talk about all the things of your life that you don't even, people would never really know you're transgender unless you bring it up, because you go out there and you live your life, and you can do that. Some of us aren't that fortunate, and I understand that. Get that in a minute. but anyways, you know, around about 2015, um, we went to a musical, Godspell, and on the way out of the theater, Cease caught the note audition flyer for a play called In Hiding, and the theater is is known for doing cutting edge theatrical productions. And this one, they said it was a transgender take on Jekyll and Hyde, Dr. Jekyll and Miss Hyde, and but basically it was more of a multiple personality type of thing, which a lot. I mean, that was one of the things that I thought about early on too, as I'm talking with my gender therapist. I says, okay, is there a multiple personality thing going on? He says, no. He says, this is who you are, and I'm saying, well, I know who I am, and and the gender therapist, they don't really come out and tell you you're transgender. They make you come up with that yourself. That's how that works. It's like, in fact, I got the question because I said, okay, am I a crossdresser or is there something else going on here? And, and they looked back at me and said, honey, do you really have to ask me that question? And it was like, you know what? I guess I don't. I know. I know I'm a woman. And and see, that is one of the things, I don't even say, I'm transgender. I just say I'm a woman. And and that has always been, because to me transgender is, I'm in the process of going from one to the other, and when I've felt I've arrived, I'm there. And I'm a woman. Um the I she showed me the thing there. I'm looking at the time. It's 35. Okay, we're closing in on this one. All right, so I have to give her time to speak too. Anyway, I brought her along. She's my moral support. She is my support. She's love of my life, and it wouldn't be
Keep going.
okay. I'm sorry. Um, so so anyways, yeah, because this is where it starts involving her. She says, she gave me the flyer. She says, here, you like cross dressing at Halloween? Take it to the stage. And I said, why not? And so I went ahead and did. And I went in and I said, I want to audition, because they had a couple, they were asking for cross dressing guys that, didn't feel bad about doing this on stage. And I was like, oh, cool. They were always going to have a guy playing Dr. Jekyll and a woman playing Miss Hyde. This was a staged reading. We were the very first theater group to put it on. And so with that, we didn't have to get a whole lot of blocking or acting or whatever. And we had been in theater all our lives, in fact, involved with the community theater around us, and such. And even, now I've got a writing partner, and I are putting on our first musical at the end of summer. Little plug there. Anyway, but anyways, I went in, and over the course of the next month, as we're doing these readings, I never met the person who played Jekyll, and I never met the person that played Miss Hyde. And I always ended up reading for Jekyll. And then one day there was this switch of personality where we went from Jekyll to Hyde like almost instantaneously, and I kept reading, but I noticed the change, and I lilted my voice up, and there's a time where I do kind of move my voice up, and all of a sudden the director saw the dichotomy of what I was doing and even the juxtaposition of one to the other. And when they had a new casting, they had a new audition, she said, well, we're going to cast for Jekyll and Miss Hyde. because these two dropped out. And I said, oh. And so the one night, that was for the audition, she asked us other cast members to come in and, read with the auditioners. Well, no one came into audition, but it was the first night out that I went out on my own dressed as a female. And I went in and nobody knew who I was. The gal at the, she opened the door for me. She said, "Oh, hi." And at that time I gave another name, and then I went in and uh and met everybody, and the director finally saw through me, and she goes, "Oh my God." You know, Needless to say, a week later I had both parts, and I ended up playing both Jekyll and Ms. Hyde on the stage. And I had a friend who had transitioned, and I kind of saw that, so I sought her out, and she came on to be the stage reader. And so we started going to support groups, in the area, so I could do my research for the part. And one night, we were coming back, and she said, "Let's go out to eat." And I said, "Okay." I was dressed, and we went into one of the restaurants, and she knew the people there. It was no big deal. And I mean, this is like back in fall of 2015. And she sat down, and she said, "Okay, I want to know something." And I go, "What?" And she said, "If you could live your life as a woman from here on out, would you?" I never had anybody ask me that before. And I looked back at her, and I got tears in my eyes. I said, "God bless me, I would. Honestly, I would." And she looked at me and she says, "That's what I thought." I says, "I probably need to talk to someone, don't I?" She says, "I'm not going to lead you in one direction or the other. I just wanted you to confront your feelings." And she said, "But if you feel you need to talk to someone, I'm not going to tell you that you don't." She says, "But," she says, "I've watched you over the past 4 months." And she says, "I can see the difference between the male you and the female you. And the female you loves life a lot more." And that hits home, to know that you're freer as yourself, and then finally realizing it. And so I sought out a gender therapist, and I saw her, and the next day, that day I come home, and she's like going, "Okay, so how did it go?" And he said, "Well, I'm a woman." She kind of rolls her eyes like, "Well, tell me something I don't know." and, um, and the next morning, we're her and William, our son, went out. William went to school. She went to work. I'm teaching, so I don't have to go until later in the day. And I dressed, and I'm looking in the mirror, and I'm going, and I just like looked at myself, and I said, "Hi, Wendy." And at that time, I never knew my name. And when I looked in the mirror that morning, and I just looked, and I said, "Hi, Wendy." And it was like, I I always liken this to remember that old stop motion animation, Santa Claus is Coming to Town, and they have the Winter Warlock, and the Winter Warlock is so evil, and he's all icy, and then when Kris Kringle hands him the present, and he says, "This for me," and all of a sudden, all that ice just crinkles off him and falls to the ground. And that's what happened to me that day. And it was like I saw myself for the first time. And it was wonderful. she came home from work and I said, guess what? I'm not this other name. I'm Wendy. And she says, good. I didn't like the other name.
Thank God.
And that's when she says, all right, so what's your middle name? And he says, well, I really hadn't thought about it, you know? But then my twin sister's name, she's named after my grandmother, Kathleen, who always went by K. So Cindy was Cindy K, Cynthia K. And and I said, okay, Wendy, what rhymes with K? And so we went through the whole alphabet and we hit on M, Wendy May. And it was like, and then she looks at me, she says, are you going to spell Wendy with an I or with a Y? And I said, probably a Y. I'm traditional, I kind of, have that old thing going. And so she says, well, then why don't you spell May with an I? And and so that's the way it worked, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So anyway, so she gave me my middle name, and so it's Wendy May, and it's spelled with an I. And even the judge that granted my name change, she was so funny because she's looking down, she's trying to Wendy May. And I said, it's Wendy May. And she smiled and she looked down and she says, and you're here for a name change. And I'm thinking that name better suits you. And I said, yes. And she says, well, I can see it does. And she granted it. And it was like, it's like you hear horror stories of people and really I really had a smooth transition. It's not without its bumps. I have a brother that hasn't talked to me in 6 years, but I have the rest of my family that's come around. My wife and son have, they've they've been there for me, and even my son. We didn't have a Father's Day. We had a Wendy Day this past week, and he was like with appreciation for all you do, and it's like in the rainbow. I was like, okay, this is cool, and then on the inside, and gratitude for who you are. Thank you. And thank you for being in my life and teaching me to be the best I can be. And so,
Okay.
breathe in.
Thank you, Wendy. Your story is just so, it touches in different ways. And I think as we transition the conversation, when we talked about your personal journey, and then there was just the emotional journey as well, we hear questions, and people are, I think, we always say people mean well when they ask questions, because when we're not traditionally exposed, or when we're not used to what we define as normal, then you ask questions because internally you just don't know, and you don't know how to ask. And when you do ask, at the end of the day, people don't mind asking questions if you want to know, out of just sincere honesty of what's happening. But then there's the questions that you feel dehumanized in them. At the end of the day, we're human, we bleed the same blood. And when you want to be identified and have the equality piece attached to it, that you are an individual who have a degree, and we have professional goals, we have family, we have spouses, and we just want to be treated that there's equal opportunity to be able to understand that we do offer value to this world. And I think that the challenge that we have sometimes is that we don't know the harm, the psychological harm that it can really cause when individuals, whether it's challenged with sexual orientation, obviously racial discrimination, all of that has a traumatizing effect. And so when we talk about the students in the classroom, because we want to open it up, obviously for questions here at the college, we have students that even when I was in my previous role, I would walk students to their classrooms, or they would sit in my office and I would have to pull the shades because they were there was such stress and anxiety to be able to expose themselves for their true identity. And then being transgender, understanding that I walked with students that were transitioning and being able to say, okay, today, yesterday was my pronoun, today is my pronoun, and I don't even know myself how to represent the world, let alone sit in the classroom and say how I'm going to be properly identified so that I can be an asset to whatever I want to pursue professionally, academically, personally, how to develop friendships, relationships. I've had students that just felt that they were very alone and that they wouldn't have genuine friendships because you were looked at it as a phenomenon. Since there was this abnormality that you're transforming in front of me, how can I have a conversation with you? And yet, I would always tell the student, I need you to talk to me in your authentic self. I need you to be expressive in how you feel individually, not what you think I want to hear, but I need for you to feel that you're authentic in the way that you communicate. And when that happened, they felt a sense of safety because they wanted to reveal not only who they were, but emotionally who they were, how they were struggling, feeling that suicide, that they were going to write a letter, calling parents and grandparents, telling them, you know, we cannot allow this student to leave this office because of these thoughts. And it's not just about dress up. It's not just about makeup. It's not just about heels and wigs. There's an emotional journey and how this will benefit or will harm or will traumatize, even the way that we carry our everyday. And I think that a lot of people don't realize that a question can be just a question, but there's such a bigger picture to it. And so if you can share with us when we have students in the classroom, just from you know, you being an adjunct and instructor for many, many years, you've had even your own personal experience when you identified and students may have found out you was a transgender woman and that enrollment kind of went from 50 to a class to now 10, and knowing that you don't want to say in the back of your mind, well, you know what, they might have dropped because of this, but I could still deliver the quality instruction that they need, but yet I will be identified differently once I, you know, just have this disclosure. Can you just share some of the recommendations for our, even for professionals? I mean, I am I was in student services. I still will assist students. There's a lot of concern about, you know, the pronoun usage. What do I say to a student when they're in the classroom? And, you know, we now have technology where we have preferred recognition. So the names
Mm-hmm.
will appear as a student preferred.
Oh yeah,
But
we see that even
sometimes,
here. Yeah.
yeah, we've had encounters though with students saying, this is what I prefer. This is my preferred pronoun or my preferred name usage, and it's not granted. And so they're embarrassed in the classroom. They
Mm-hmm.
are horrified because now, as we've had a personal conversation, I may not want to be out, you know, but now you've out me.
Right. That
And now
was
I
this
have
whole thing
another,
too.
yeah,
You
and I
know.
have another conversation I have to have. Not only am I dealing with anxiety, stress, depression, and therapy, I'm dealing with, now I'm in the classroom, my faculty member has out me, and now I don't know if I'm going to have friends the next day. So it's not just about, well, we're just trying to accommodate or make it
Right.
better. There's always different stages to a person, whether it's minority, gender, sexuality, all of that has a role that there's an effect it has on a person's life. So could you walk that through what that may look
Sure.
like and just some recommendations?
Mm-hmm. I've had several experiences of having transgender women in my classroom as students. I've had several who, for lack of a better term, have been very androgynous and haven't led one way or another. But the cool thing is, if it's a cool thing at all, is that back in 2012, I had a student, um, and a transgender person can always spot another transgender person a lot easier than a cisgender person who, because I've had people look at me and say, I would have never known. But yet there are some people you can tell. And and so for me, I've always managed to have like this second sense or fourth sense or whatever. I pick up on it. And one gal, she came in, and I could clearly tell that her student picture that she had and her name was a guy's name. And I'm looking at this, and I look at her as she's coming in, and she gives me this look like, what? And I'm like, nothing, and so I learned a lot from her. The first night, and I have always been one to excuse me, have the students introduce themselves, and it wasn't a gender based thing. It was usually the last names. I did not want to massacre anybody's last name, and or their first name if they had a preferred way of saying it. So I'm like, okay, I adopted early on, go around the classroom and introduce yourself. And in this gal, she, when it came to her, what was really cool was a character design class, and that's where you learn to draw characters for animation. And it was really fun because she got up, she was all the characters she loved, which several in the class loved too, so instant key on that. And then she said her name, and I looked down and I kind of matched up her visage with, whatever, and I said, it's nice to have you in class. And as I say with everybody, they introduce themselves, thank you for sharing, and it's nice to have you in class. And can you repeat your last name again, because I didn't really catch it the first time you said it a little quick, and I want to make sure that I know how to pronounce it correctly. And that's usually, it brings them in on, that someone cares enough that they ask how to pronounce their name, and some of them will even say, like I have a person with the initials, and I don't want to put anything out there, but anyways, it's clearly their name is there, and then in our Zoom meeting here, they have the initials. And it's like I look down, and when they introduce themselves, they say, oh, I'm so and so, and I look down, and I kind of, because I don't, on my current roster, I don't get to see what they look like. All I see is, okay, I'm matching this up with this, and I said, okay, and we move on. I even found that let's say I have a person like Charles, and basically he says, and I'm Chuck, and and we continue on, and I'll just say, okay, let me make a note of that, you prefer Chuck. And he said, yes, thank you. And I have found that, it's, if even you suspect, you really have to play it close to the vest. As you say, one of the unwritten codes in maybe it's written now, is in the transgender society, is you don't out somebody else. You don't. All right? That information is confidential, and you treat it as such. You never out, because you never know who is on another watching end. And that even goes for social media. I never out anybody unless they've already outed themselves, or if I've outed myself. And I get very upset sometimes when I see other transgender women kind of propagate their own agenda on my Facebook page, and it's like, no, okay. So there is that kind of unwritten rule in that. The same person at break came up, and this is 2012, so there's not a whole lot of rules. It's not as prevalent as it is today. And he slipped me a note saying, "Is it okay if I use the female bathroom?" And I looked at her, and she said, "Just yes or no." And I looked at her and I said, "Use the bathroom you're comfortable with." And she said, "Oh, thank you." And it really, and then I brought it up to my administration at the time, and I said, "What do I do about this?" And just so happened that we were next to like career services, and I could unlock that door and she could use the bathroom of her choice if she felt uncomfortable. So at that time, that was the answer. It's so funny because as I came out to this institution, when I transitioned, they started implementing the intersex bathrooms, which I feel, and I even felt, I had to really weigh coming out here. So it was, for that, she took that one class and I never saw her again. Years later, after I transitioned, I'm down at another college, another campus, and I have a transgender gal come walking in, and beautiful. Oh man, she was very beautiful, and she went and sat down, and I couldn't tell because, as an intersex person, you can see I don't have an Adam's apple, and that's, as we call it in the world, passing. A lot of transgender women don't have that luxury because they have to wear a scarf to cover, and then their voice kind of gives it away too. Which I had my suspicions when she walked in the room, but when she sat down and I looked down, her name matched her, and it was like, no big deal. And 2 weeks later, she came up to me and she says, "Are you the person or the instructor that this other instructor told me about?" And I'm going, first off, he shouldn't have never outed me. Second, I know why he did. Just so this gal would feel a little bit more at ease with me. She's because she had to ask, it was like she didn't know for sure, and she was very tentative about asking. She brought up the other guy's name, and it was like, okay, is he, and so we kind of hit it off at that point, and she gave me that look like, "You're not gonna out me, are you?" And it was like, no, why would I? First and foremost, when I'm hired to instruct, I don't come in and say, "I'm a transgender woman and I'm your instructor." I don't. I'm the instructor. It's obvious I'm a woman, and I just go and put my name on the board and, "Hi, I'm Professor Wendy Julien, and I will be your instructor for the next 15 weeks." and it just kind of goes like that, and that is the be all end all. If someone wants to talk to me about me after hours, but I do not talk about my personal life in the classroom, that's not what I'm hired to do. I'm hired to deliver the information and impart it upon my students, and hopefully they take away from that. And now, because I'm getting more and more, I joined one of the groups at another college, and some of the students know now. But as you were talking about the first time, I know I'm kind of really going off on all this. Thank you. You're really heading in. So basically, what was, with this student in another campus, they did not change my name on the roster because my name wasn't legally changed yet. 2 other colleges did. This college did not. And when I went in and they were looking and saw the guy's name up there, they were wondering if I was the spouse of this person, you know. And I'm not one to keep up pretenses, you know. I basically said, you know what? Things changed over the summer and I am Professor Wendy. The name on your load sheet or your sheet that you have for this class, that is me. And I have been at this institution for this long. And so basically, that was one of the classes where I lost 50% of my students between week 1 and week 2. Even kind of joking with them, I says, you get one of the first transgender women to teach your classes. You know, you're a very progressive class. And so over time, it's like when I got my name legally changed, I went back to the institution. I said, please change it. You know, the other institutions already did. They didn't change it at the molecular level of, you know, Social Security and all that, but on my email and my registration, they did, just so the students know who I am, and that's all they need to know. And basically, ever since then, all my new classes that I've had, I don't tell them. I mean, I come in, it's Professor Julien. If something else is going on around there and people know and they're talking about it, they don't talk about it with me. But I don't know where, you know, I mean, I don't bring it up. But other than that, I think the pronouns are very integral. I usually wear a little safety pin on me to let the LGBT community know that I'm safe. That's the whole safety pin thing. I think even Cease kind of wore it at work a couple times. So, do you need to add anything? I mean,
No, you're just moving along very well.
okay. I'm sure there's questions for her too. So I'm like, all right.
Well, we're gonna see, we're gonna just kind of get a temperature check on if there's any questions from the participants. Feel free to chime in or unmute yourself, or you can put it in the chat box and I can ask the question on your behalf. Do we have any questions at the moment? Even if it's a student scenario, because I think that is very, very important that we become much more aware, especially when it comes to our students feeling safe. And I think when I hear a lot of students talking to me personally, in my previous role, that was the main concern is, will I feel safe if I identify, and just creating that culture where the students can feel comfortable having these conversations, because it goes back to our conversation about the many questions that you get. And
I gave her a whole list of questions.
You gave me a whole list of questions that, people
it's
have
statements,
asked you.
like,
Yeah.
know, why now?
Yeah,
it's like, and then the other ones are, wow, you glow. You look so great. And then I have another one. You ruin your life. And then
yeah, well, it's this. It's also, I think that what's hard to talk about sometime is, and we talked about it briefly, Wendy, is it's not a, and I haven't said this to you directly, but even when I have conversations with my students, they feel like they're manipulating. Like, I don't want people to think that I'm manipulating anyone or I'm playing a game or trying, you use the bathroom as an example of, if you identify as a female, then, if I go into the bathroom, or do I have an agenda by going into, the women's restroom? There's all these conversations that may come up that people have, they've heard, and they have the stigma attached, and they feel that if they walk in their authentic self, that they're going to be stigmatized by these stereotypes. You know, are you able to keep a job? Like some of the questions that you asked, but are you really happy? You know, um, how does it feel to go from a man's world to a woman's world? And I think that, you know, these are questions that you would get. Do you have your quote unquote guy picture with you? Can I see it? And I think it also just rest assures like who I am is really who you just need to identify with. They don't understand like even the psychological trauma that has, that for you to take me back to my past is not necessary because I'm trying to move forward. But I think it's really someone just trying to just ask because it's just not the norm to them,
Right.
and you're trying to walk through it, but at the same time you don't know the psychological damage, but you also don't want people to feel, well, as I hear, oh, I gotta walk on eggshells, I don't want to say the wrong thing, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, I really
Depends
really
on the person. As you said, you know, in the transgender spectrum, as long and wide as there are transgender people, and what might not be offensive to one might be totally offensive and trigger another. The levels of gender dysphoria, social dysphoria, body dysphoria. I have to walk on eggshells around my transgender friends sometimes because, you know, for me, it's like there's this thing out there with Transition Tuesday. And it's like I have friends who've, you know, I've transitioned with. I've kind of moved on from Transition Tuesday, and now I call it anything but. I call it Techno Pop Tuesday and show my latest 80s band that I'm into. Or, you know, Tasty Tuesday and I show
right.
my latest culinary creation. Um, and then, yeah, I see them go back and back, and it's like, I can't really, that's where they're at. Okay, that's where they're at. That's where they have meaning. That's what means something to them. For me to even say, well, that's not where I'm at, I'm kind of pushing this on you, I can't, and I won't, because that's them. And we need to give ourselves the same respect we expect others to give to us. And so it's just a matter of meeting everybody where we're at. I was gonna kind of parlay that over because when you mentioned about one of the questions, I looked at, you know, C's here, you know, with Sister Sue and asking that question to you about me when I first transitioned, about why would I.
Oh, yeah. Says being a woman is hard enough. Why would you want to be one?
And she didn't ask
Well,
me, she asked C's, you know. So, and if anybody, you know, is like, what, you know, how does the family feel? And he says, you know, what do you think? I have a father-in-law who's a psychiatrist. I had her oldest sister is a sociologist and a social worker, and she has 7 brothers. Okay, I have 7 brothers-in-law that I went from being one of the in-laws to one of the outlaws because of where I'm at here. And you know, so you're right. It hits on all these levels, you know, because now, you know, my brother doesn't even want to talk to me. You know, well, I'm praying for you. Okay, pray. It's working. I'm doing great. We're doing great. You know, so um, kind of answer a question in the right
yes, it
way.
does. I think when we talk about you being a transgender woman, it is, as I am a woman, a cis woman, I want to have some things kept to myself. You know, some things are personal. And I think if I'm not going to talk about my relationships, then why would you? I think we forget that there's things that could be defined as inappropriate for one's personal
Oh yeah,
space
you
as an
know,
individual.
the
And
big one. How do you have sex? And
yeah,
it's
we
like,
don't need to know that.
I'm like,
No
really?
thanks.
You would ask me that? You know, you didn't even ask me that when I was a guy. All right, so don't go ask me that now. And in the guy picture, you know, that's the gal that was my hygienist. You wouldn't happen to have a guy picture on either, so I can look at it. Just, why would I got away from him. I'm just like, and this was like, granted, 3 years after, I had already had my legal name change, my legal gender change, and it was like, that doesn't, I will show, my old cross-dressing pictures of me when it comes to Transition Tuesday, and they're saying, how did you look in 2010? I says, well, I look pretty good. And, and they're going, no, and I said, I don't go there. I have, the past did what it had to do. I recognize it. I learned from it. It was great. To a certain extent, there are some parts I don't want to revisit. And now I'm in the present. Tomorrow is tomorrow. And you know what? I am thankful for today. And if I can count my blessings every day, I have a family. I'm talented. I play in a band. I draw. I teach. I'm very, computer savvy with multimedia and animation. In fact, in the book I'm writing about us, it's like, if you're looking for me to be just the transgender person and spout off transgenderism, you've come to the wrong book, because being transgender does not define who I am. Being an artist, being a musician, being a teacher, being a humanitarian, being a good person, being a a sister, being a spouse, being a parent, that's what defines me.
Correct. That's so true. And so I'm just going to do another temperature check to see, does anyone have any questions for Miss Wendy? Any burning questions, scenarios? Ask them now.
Did I cover everything? What, do you have Cease any questions? I mean, she's like, she gets asked a lot of questions too. That's
I'm sure. I'm sure. And I'm sure, Cease, how do you feel when you get those questions? Have you ever had a moment of, oh boy, what have I done here?
No, not that type of thing. The sex question in the beginning, that was the one I was getting from a lot of the girlfriends. And, the thing, when we asked the therapist, it's like, how do you dodge that? And he looked at him and he said, you tell them it's none of their damn business.
Right.
And that helped. It just helped to be able to say, phew, okay, I have a good answer, because it really is. You don't go around asking people about that. That's ridiculous. And the more challenging thing was the family, because of my large family. And my dad made a decree: Wendy's not allowed in their house ever. And that was really tough. And family events that my dad paid for, Wendy couldn't go to. And it's like, really? So I didn't go either. And, was standing true to, are you kidding me? You're making this really stupid rule. But I did make a commitment, and I show up at my family, my dad and mom's house every week, once a week. And my mom just passed away. And if they start going on about Wendy, I get up and leave.
She does.
I'll give them a warning. All right, let's take the subject somewhere else. And if they keep going, I leave. And I let them know that I will not tolerate bad talk. And so they've gotten better, or, they did. My mom got better about not saying stuff, and my dad will stop. He learned. When I walked away one day and I was supposed to take a bunch of stuff, nope, I just walked away.
She didn't walk away. She got in the car and came home. And I was like, you're home already?
Yep.
And she goes, yep. And I'm going, oh.
There are taboo subjects, and that's one of them. If you're not going to talk nice about my family life, then I don't have to sit here. So that's been one of the tougher areas with my family, to see who moved away and who is kind of embracing, or who actually acts just the same. And with a large family, there's a lot. It's hard to know. You got your in-laws, and you got your nephews and nieces, and some family members who have filtrated their opinion down. That's been interesting to see. But questions that I've gotten, in the beginning, it was how are you holding up? And how are you feeling about it? And how long have you known? That was always the big one. How long have you known? Well, hell, I've known about it almost, at least half of our married life, and especially the dressing. All right, you dress fine, but when I get home, I don't want you dressed. It made me kind of uneasy. It was weird for me. But you want to dress, and we had a closet full of clothes, and the food. My God, we had so many shoes. We had to reserve a shoe rack just for the shoes.
I don't even wear them now.
Doesn't even wear 'em. Right, and I don't know. It was, you are who you are, and I do things that I like to do, and this is something you like to do, and having that kind of a relationship, you still gotta do your cleaning, you still gotta, go to work, and this is your relief time, and okay, you know, how long have I known? I don't know if I could really pinpoint it, but it evolved. It definitely
It
evolved
evolved, yeah.
and became more. And one of the things that Wendy doesn't mention is Wendy always had something wrong. There was always medication. There was always a headache. There was always, a lot. And we thought way, way back a long time ago that there was an imbalance somewhere. There was a chemical imbalance, that she just didn't have what it took to stay healthy. And when this came around, it was like light bulb. Everything changed.
And within 6 months of being on hormones, my kidneys regenerated, my liver regenerated. It was like I had a whole new lease on life. It really, and they say a lot of that was due to stress as well. Stress being having to be somebody you weren't.
Right.
And then on top of it, even going in and finding out my blood levels were more, because they do take, medically on the medical side, they take your blood and they have to know how many of the hormones to give you to put you where you need to be. And so I have a very good HRT doctor, and we found that I was operating more on the female side my whole life with where my blood was at and my male hormones, female hormones. I was closer to being female, and and it was that fighting between those that really made me sick. And they even told me that if in summer of 2015, if something didn't happen or change or whatever, I would be dead by Christmas 2017. And when all this transpired,
Yeah.
I went back in and had my blood levels checked at the end of the summer. And not only did they change more to where they were supposed to be, we found out that my own estrogen hormones within my body, my own estrogen makers, were making it for me now. And so that shot my estrogen way up, and everybody was like, "Whoa!" Because that only happens like to 1 in 1,000 or 10,000 transgender people, where the hormones actually start regulating themselves without the additional help.
Wow. Wendy, we have, because I know we're going to be closing in on our chat. I did see a hand raise. I don't know if she still wants to ask the question. If so, feel
Oh,
free.
Hi, Jess. Hi,
Hi,
Wendy.
Kat.
hi.
Um, I'm glad to have made it today because the Michigan jury system just thought they were going to use
Yeah.
me today. And I was like, holy guacamole. They kept on threatening to call me in. And so I got a chance to listen to the chat today. And I guess my question is more on the other side, the transgender men. I've had a couple in class, and I was teaching speech at the time. And the first situation I really encountered, the student came up to me right after the end of the first class and said, well, this is my preferred name. And she says, you seem to be more open to this. And I said, well, since we use names in this class a lot, if you want to make your name change, let's do it now. But legally, I still had to have on the records what her signed at birth name was. And so we did it in the class, and nobody even questioned it until the very end when she did a speech on pronouns. And, well, actually, it was her. I was so used to calling her she, so forgive me. But
We get
using
that a
him
lot.
and using the pronoun, that was the first time I'd ever heard of pronouns. and he really helped me understand what his needs were in that class. So I guess my question is, what would you have liked to have seen in your class as a student that would help you in the class? What can we do to help this? I'm thinking I always said nicknames. Maybe I should just say preferred names now. Um,
Um, you know, a lot of times when I would go around the classroom and have them introduce themselves, a lot of them kind of picked up on the fact, I don't know if I'm just that laid back instructor, um, that they could have given me any name. I go by Charlie, I go by Chuck, and you see Charles written down there. And or you might see Charlene, and they go, I go by Charlie,
mhm.
and now you're saying, oh, okay, and really, I have found that going with the flow is what they really like. They don't want to see that little blip. I've seen the blip before where, and I'm not talking about the one where Thanos, did the snap and everybody blipped out of existence. I'm talking about the one where, you bring up anything that's out of the social norm, and you have this instant reaction, like, someone always says, so what does your husband think about that? I'm in buying drums, okay, so what does your husband say about this? And it's like, husband? And there's this, like, because first off, more drummers are men. And so I was like, well, my wife really thinks it's cool. And and instantly, people can't help it, because of the way they were raised or whatever. It's like, it's that instant, like, you have a wife. And it's like, but yet there are some people where you say, well, my wife just, she likes the fact that I'm playing drums. And
All right, I got to
and
tell you a funny story about this.
some
When my
people,
husband when my
go
husband
ahead.
and I got married, he's the chef in the family, and so we listed all the cookware that I wanted, but he wanted to use, and I wanted all the tools. And I never got the tools, but we did get the cookware. And everybody thought he wanted the tools. I want the tools. Okay, I'm the one who's the handy person, but I'm cis, so a lot of people just couldn't understand that I wanted the tools. And when a friend of mine who passed, he had swords, and I remember his law team said to him, "No, Lance, she really doesn't want the swords." And I said, "Yes, I really want the swords." Okay, and who's to say who wants what? By the way, I did get the swords. Um,
Oh, great.
yeah, I can do a little role playing here, or be the warrior princess here. Um, and with a big sword, by the way. I've got a claymore, so big sword. And I just want to make sure that my students feel comfortable, and that's why I'm asking what I'm asking. You know,
Yes, and really, it's the emotions that we grow up with that we have to be very careful of, and especially as an instructor, to maintain that look of accommodation instead of a surprise to the social norm. And sometimes that's such an instantaneous reaction, we don't even realize we're doing it. And but now we have to be open to, even, like you say, who's cooking. Well, that's like, more of the woman's job. Well, is it? Most chefs in these big restaurants are guys. When it comes down to playing drums, it's still a man's world. And so, a woman playing drums is like, whoa, I belong to a Drummers Girl United group. And it's really interesting that when that comes up, and you say, great, and you don't show, you just become like, it's like a part of that person, and it's accepted right off the bat. And it's like someone comes up, and like a guy, he says, I'm a ballerina, or he says, I'm into ballet, and it's like, cool, Disney Plus just had something on that with two
On
little boys.
point.
Hmm?
Hmm. On point. Or
On point. Yeah.
I
Um,
watched it. It was really interesting.
it is.
Because I love the ballet, and it was interesting to see how they do the Nutcracker and how they get the kids involved.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Wendy,
My
I know I just want to chime in real quick because I know we're coming in. With back to our students, when I was
Did I
a
answer
trio
Kat's
advisor,
question?
there was another question.
No, did I answer Kat's question?
Oh, Kat.
I believe so. I I guess this is what I call a work in progress. I want to learn more so that I don't do the blip. Um, and I try not to, but I might have a surprised look on my face because I'm pretty transparent. But I usually do the blip and go, okay, well, what do you want to go through?
Nice rebound. Yeah.
Hmm.
I think it's also important too that like we are in the process when we work within our technology, human resources, making sure that we have updated technology to accommodate, which we've been moving forward in that students have the opportunity to have their preferred name. There's, I think, what has been a lot of conversation and concern is when we have students that are transitioning. I know when I was in trio, that is a huge area that we have a student that comes in and you watch them transition over the semester. And I have been able, thankfully, been able to have the conversations with my students that are transitioning to ask those questions of, how would you want this to be addressed? And many times the student will say, one, don't apologize. When you make a mistake and the pronoun has changed,
They even say
because
that in the documentation.
yeah, I've had a student and I'm making up a name, was Tiffany, now John, and I make the mistake and call you Tiffany. And I'm so sorry. Don't do that. Keep the conversation going because, like you said, that blimp, that moment now creates an awkward communication, and then the delivery after that is just really, it changes the dynamic. I mean, and I think as human beings, you just want to make sure that the person's okay. So that's the first thing you're going to do is apologize. But I think also it's just keeping in mind that all the other conversations and questions, what we're dealing with right now is ensuring that the student has a quality educational experience
Mm-hmm.
and that everything else really is not relevant unless the student brings it for interpretation or conversation, and that we just want to just have that moment where we know if like I've had students that have concerns, but I'm not even going to dive into those concerns. I'm going to let you, disclose as much as what is a concern to you, because I think that's the other piece for students that identify as transgender. And we talked about it, Wendy, like there's a huge division in the LGBTQ community. Like there, so it's
Mm-hmm.
it's it's huge. And this conversation definitely has not stopped. We have so many other levels to identify all of the individuals in our gay community that have concerns, and every perspective is different.
Mm-hmm.
So first, just look at me as a human being, talk to me as a human being, and I'll tell you what you need to know, and we can move forward with that. And I think, I'm not trying to push my views on you and you on me. Let's
And
just,
that's important
yeah.
because a lot of times, all of a sudden, if you see that happening in your classroom and all of a sudden there's like this mini debate going on about this is like, this is not open for debate within my classroom. Because really, if that's going to be the one deciding factor for that student who feels threatened or would even drop the class or even drop out of school or even drop out of life, it really is very important that these students know that the instructor has their back on this. And if something is going on in the class with bullying or agitation or antagonistic attitudes, it's like, no. And you should note that and document it because that is not something that just happens in the classroom. It happens outside of the classroom on campus too. And in the administration needs to be flagged about, look, there was incident, for lack of a better word, in our class where our the discussion turned toward the gender debate, and we had several students who were very uncomfortable, and I visibly, and you can see that in one of the things that even I've read in the literature about how to address this on campus in the classroom, be it elementary, high school, college. It's very much you know, it's not that it's taboo, it's that we're not going there. Okay? Because, and it's not that it's such a volatile, well, it is a volatile topic, but it's a matter of student safety and tolerance, and saying, you know what, I can see where this discussion is headed, and we're not going to go there. And you know what, if you want to take it up outside, it's going to be worse, because when it's on the outside, there's more people who can kind of step in, aside from the instructor, who's just kind of saying, all right, cool down, our class is about this. I'm teaching drawing, and if this person wants to draw an androgynous person over here, okay, that is their character right, because it takes all of us in this world to make it work. And we're seeing that now more in our media, in our communications, in our animations out there, in our TV shows, in just in our own cultural media, aside from in even real life. I'm here. We're making it work. Yeah, we're one of the 2% of transgender couples where one of them is transgender that has survived. Most couples, 98% of the couples out there will dissipate if one, be it male or female, in the relationship starts living their authentic self.
Classroom setting. Go back to the classroom setting. That's what.
Go back to the classroom setting.
Well,
Yeah.
Wendy, we are coming into a close. I mean,
I know. I'm watching that.
Sometimes it's not enough hours in a day, but we are not done. There's so much work to be done, and the college institution wants to know, and we want to make it an educational and safe experience for all of our students. So I'm
Did I
sure
help
we're
do
going to.
that?
I'm sorry.
Did I help do that?
I think you helped do that. I think it truly does take a village, right? I mean,
Yes.
we can't do this by ourselves. And so I really appreciate and thank you for opening up your personal life, allowing us to walk with you through this. Thank you for everything that you have contributed to our educational system to ensure that our students are safe, because that is the first and foremost thing that we should always keep in mind, that we should feel safe and that we should have some advocacy, that when we hear something, let's have a voice to say, you know what, this is not going to be tolerated. No one is going to encourage hatred. So thank you again, Wendy, and we appreciate you, and we look forward to seeing you again, okay? And thank you, everybody, for joining us today.
Thank
and we
you.
will see you
Thank
again.
you very much for listening.